let's talk about the Von Erich family. Welcome back to WWH. My name is Andrew Dreamer, and today is going to be a little bit different. This review is straight out of the theater. I'm not really preparing the way I typically do for a review, but I just got out of the theater seeing The Iron Claw, and I wanted to get my thoughts out on the film and basically just get a review out there, so let's just jump right into it. The Iron Claw stars Zac Efron, Jeremy Allen White, Harris Dickinson, Holt McCallany, Maura Tierney, and Stanley Simons. Collectively, they portray the Von Erich family of Denton, Texas. Now, if you're a wrestling fan, you probably know the story of the Von Erichs. And if you don't, well, this movie is, well, it's a lot. Let's just say it that way. Now, the first part of this review is going to be spoiler-free, and then I'm going to get into some spoilers towards the end of the review. I will let you know when that switch happens, so if you haven't seen the film yet, and you don't want it spoiled, that you can go ahead and click off and then come back to the review later once you've seen the film. Right off the bat, I just gotta say, this movie is freaking amazing. It's the best wrestling movie I believe that's ever been made. And I thought The Wrestler with Mickey Rourke was really good, but this one tops it for me by a pretty big margin. And I'm not ashamed to say that. I think that all of the performances in this movie, the casting, the direction, the dialogue, the writing, everything in this movie just fit together as nearly perfect as it possibly could be. And when you see this movie, you'll understand what I mean. But it's a very tragic story. And if you don't take the proper care and consideration when telling a story like this, then I think it's being disingenuous, but I don't believe that they did that. Sure, maybe the timelines weren't exactly perfect. Maybe there are a few details that got changed or something like that, but it's not that big of a deal. Everything else in the movie is to the best of my knowledge, it was really factual. And I think that that is amazing when you can tell a story like that, and the story it tells itself. Sometimes those stories don't, but this story absolutely does just tell itself. If I'm being honest, Zac Efron, to me, this is probably the best performance he's ever given in his entire career. The only thing that I can think of that might come close was his portrayal of Ted Bundy. I don't know, I think I prefer this, and maybe I'm biased, just, being such a big fan of professional wrestling, but the way that he portrayed Kevin Von Erich to me was perfect. I mean, he looked like Kevin Von Erich. He got in tremendous shape. He put on a lot of size and muscle to portray this role. If I was given my choice of Oscar nominees for Best Actor, I would give it to Zac Efron. That's not to take anything away from the rest of the cast, because Jeremy Allen White did a fantastic job. Stanley Simons did a fantastic job. So did Harris Dickinson and Holt McCallany and Maura Tierney and everybody else in the film. There's not a bad performance in this movie, and I think that that is just a product of the writing and the direction and the passion that all of these people have, and the passion that they see within this family when you look at the history. Because yes, the Von Erich family is a story of tragedy and heartbreak and pain, but it is also one of passion and determination and perseverance. And I think that those good qualities, they really ring true throughout this film, especially going into the ending, which I'm not going to spoil the ending here yet. But I like I said, I think that those qualities really come through the screen. Of course, this film was made by A24, and it is pretty easy to tell. A24 has a very specific style and tone and even look to the films that they produce, and this absolutely fits into that. And I used to not be a big fan of A24, but lately they're starting to grow on me, and that's fine, it happens. So to close out this portion of the review, I just want to say this movie is fantastic. If you haven't seen it, absolutely go see it. It is worth the money, it's worth the watch. So go check it out and learn about the Von Erich family, or experience it a little bit differently than you're used to hearing. By the way, Go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on an episode of WWH. We're closing in on 600 subscribers, and we would love to have you be a part of the WWH Universe. Okay, let's transition over to the spoiler-filled section of this review. Obviously, you have the Von Erich family. The oldest one is Kevin Von Erich, played by Zac Efron. He is not technically the oldest because they had an older brother that died when he was 5 years old. That's a sad story in itself. He stepped in a water puddle that was electrified by a wire and it killed him. So that's already tragic and sad, just right off the bat. But then you get this family. Their father he's controlling and he seems very mean, but he also really just wants his children to succeed. He wants them to be better than he was, and I think that that's admirable, but I do recognize that he maybe took it a little too far at some times, and I think that Holt McCallany does a good job of portraying that on the screen. There's even an interview that he gave where he says as much. So the other brothers that are left besides Kevin are Carrie, David, and Mike. Now, Carrie and David, both very athletic. Mike is not. Mike is more interested in playing music and, other things outside of wrestling. He doesn't have the body type that his brothers have. And normally, that's fine. You have other interests, go do them. But in this family, you have to wrestle because that's what Fritz wants. And he pushes Mike to lift weights and all these things. And he kind of holds off on it for long enough. But eventually, they gain popularity. David Von Erich goes over to Japan. And while in Japan, he passes away while in his hotel room. And I know that there was a lot of controversy around his death and the actual cause, but the movie goes with there was a rupture in his intestines, and we'll leave it at that because I don't want to get into the actual whatever the controversies are. At that point, that just leaves Carrie and Kevin wrestling. But Carrie is also out of action at the moment because of a motorcycle accident that caused him to lose his foot. Now, they didn't tell the rest of the world that he lost his foot, and he's trying to train and get better and wrestle on a prosthetic foot, and he eventually does, but it takes some time. So in the meantime, Kevin trains Mike to get in the ring. Kevin has a match. He does a few drop kicks, and on the last drop kick, he lands on his shoulder and does some damage to it, requiring a surgery. Now, it's a routine surgery. It doesn't seem like it's too big of a deal. In the midst of that surgery, he suffered what they call toxic shock syndrome and went into a coma. Now, he did come out of the coma, but when he came out of the coma, he had some brain damage and wasn't able to do the things that he used to do. And this took its toll on him, and he ended up taking his own life with a combination of pills and alcohol. And of course, his family finds him, and they're going through this again. And it's really, really sad. It's a very emotional, sad movie. Like, there's not a lot of happiness in this. There are a few glimmers of happiness, and like I said, those good qualities that really push through in the story. But there's a lot of emotional, sad times as well. A couple years go by and things seem like they're going good. Carrie goes to at the time, WWF, and he becomes Intercontinental Champion. And, he's making money. He buys his father a handgun, and, things are seeming good. Kevin is kind of back on his feet now. He's recovered mentally, and he's, got his children and his wife, and things are just good. One night he gets a call from his brother Carrie, and he's saying that he's scared, and he's saying things that are really scaring Kevin. So he calls his dad and tells him to watch out for Carrie. Of course, Fritz doesn't really heed this warning. He basically tells the sons to work it out amongst themselves, that it's their problem. So the next morning, Kevin goes straight to his father's house. He gets there, he finds Carrie's car, the door's open, he walks towards the house, and that front door is open as well, and then out of nowhere you hear a gunshot. And Carrie has shot himself through the chest. And in this scene, and then the following scene are, like I said, just very, very emotional. Kevin picks his brother's body up and takes him into the house and lays him on the table. But we also see Kerry on this little sailboat, not even a sailboat, it's more like a canoe. And he's, just kind of just going across the lake, and he sees his other two brothers sitting on the dock. He sees David and Mike, and they're sitting there, and they wave him over, and they all have this big hug. And then Kerry asks where Jack Jr. is, their oldest brother that passed away. And it's just kind of it's a nice moment. The brothers all hug and embrace, and they seem happy, but at the same time, it's still very, very, very sad. And then the movie kind of closes with Kevin and his wife in their new house that they bought with the money he made from selling the World Class Championship Wrestling to Jerry Jarrett, which is a different story for another day. I'm not going to go into all that. If you would like to see me kind of do a deep dive on the Von Erich family in long video format, I will do that. Let me know in the comments. But for now, let's just stick to this movie. So there's a scene that closes the film where Kevin is watching his sons play. They're throwing a football, and you can just see this wave of emotion come across Kevin, and he starts sobbing, and his sons see him cry, and they go to check on him, ask him if it's all right. He says, "Oh, I'm sorry you have to see me this way. Men shouldn't cry." And his sons reassure him, "It's okay to cry. We cry all the time." And he thanks them, and they ask him why he's sad. And what he says is seriously one of the most heartbreaking and sad things that I've ever heard. He says, "I used to be a brother, and now I'm not one at all." And that line hit me hard. I'm not gonna lie. It was very emotional. And then his kids tell him that they will be his brother, and he thanks them, and then they go run and play, and that's how the movie ends. So the movie itself ends, with that happy note of Kevin and his family surviving and persevering and really just getting through all of the so-called Von Erich curses that have been out there and that Kevin himself was worried about for a long time. But they persevered and they got through it. And Kevin has a beautiful family. His sons are wrestling, and Kevin and his children were just on Dynamite a couple weeks ago, and it was really cool to see. I'm glad that their story is getting told. Everything I've seen tells me that Kevin and his family are happy with the film and the way that everything turned out. Like I said, there were a few things that probably weren't quite accurate, maybe some timelines that didn't add up. But those are kind of just issues that come up when you're making a movie. It's not always the easiest to do everything exactly as it happened because you have to tell a story within a movie. And it's kind of hard to condense that much information into a movie. So I understand that, and it's not a big deal. But like I said, it seemed like Kevin Von Erich and his family were very happy with the way the film turned out, and I'm very happy about that. But that's going to do it for this out of theater reaction / review. If you have already seen the movie, let me know what you thought about it down in the comments below. If you want to see me kind of do an in-depth, not a review, but like a biography of the Von Erich family, let me know down in the comments as well. We have a lot more coming your way very soon on WWH, but until then, my name is Andrew Dreamer, and this is Wrestling with Horror.